But I want to introduce another concept since you brought that up. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing has a theory that the reason why there's so much animosity from whites towards blacks is because of a fear of genetic annihilation. And that because she's using Barack Obama as an example, she says, I might ask you, what is Barack Obama, black or white? We already talked about this. Barack Obama is black, let's say, right? Most people would say that, right? Yet, he has a white mother and a black father. Mm-hmm. So if black plus white equals black, mm-hmm. this to the subconscious mind suggests that the black male sexuality to some extent is a threat to white male identity. This is called the Crest theory of color concentration by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and she said this is why during lynchings, for example, white on black violence is the only incidence where you see widespread mutilation of the genitals. I don't know if you know that during lynchings
they used to cut off genitals.
They would very commonly cut off the genitals. I don't know if any of you know who I'm sure you know who George Washington Carver is. If you probably may not have heard of George Washington Carver, he is one who is not as credited as someone like Nikola Tesla, but he's like a Nikola Tesla. He was a contemporary. Yeah. Ford knew both of them. Nikola Tesla introduced electric cars before there were gas-powered cars, and Carver introduced bodies for vehicles that were made of soy-based plastics before there were steel cars, and it was the steel industry that silenced Carver. And by the way, the manufacturing plant is named by George Washington Carver because he was a botanist, and he said that you need to develop your manufacturing the way that a plant provides resources to its leaves, and that's how he invented the manufacturing plant, a black man. One thing that you should know about George Washington Carver is George Washington Carver was adopted by a white family, and if you ever hear his voice, he speaks with a very high-pitched tone. The reason is because they had a white daughter, and to make sure that there were no problems, they castrated him at the age of 12. So this is something. So again, what I'm saying here is that what Dr. Welsing says is that there's a difference between what we think of as tribalism and the tribes going at each other. Racism isn't that. There's a difference between black on white crime and black on white bigotry and violence. And this is where we get into identity, and both of you are ostensibly white, so I want to know how you feel about the idea that white racism, specifically the feeling that whites have against other group, is unique because whites are uniquely, because of their genetic recessiveness. We know that blue eyes are genetically recessive, right? If you have a couple with blue eyes and then brown eyes, both white, the child will be more likely to have brown eyes and less likely to have blue eyes because blue eyes is a recessive trait. Mm-hmm. Whiteness is also a recessive trait. That's why Barack Obama appears to be black, even though he has a white parent and a black parent. This is genetics. It has nothing to do with race. And so what is the argument is that whiteness as an identity, these aren't Welsing's words, these are my words trying to paraphrase her. Whiteness is itself pathological because it sets up an identity around a recessive trait that is necessarily puts you in threat.
Whites have been threatened, and black sexuality has been feared. That's the reason for a whole lot of lynchings in the South. I mean, and the threat of black males has been there that underlies so much of the lynching, the Scottsboro case, a lot of the thing, and it lingers. That's why people like Rodney King, big black men, have always been feared.
I mean, is that why George Floyd was killed?
George Floyd, it's the same thing. I mean, he's a big black man. Even unconsciously, it's been major fear in the white population. Even when it's not consciously articulated, it's always been there. The white race, you're right, I mean, it's a recessive trait, so it's always been a fearful thing. It's lingered as part of American history for centuries.
Can I press on that question a little bit more? And I know
Sure.
this is, I'm not advocating this point, this is devil's advocate. And I appreciate that you don't identify as white, but my question could whiteness be itself pathological?
No, I don't think it's pathological, just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of whites who are threatened by it. I'm obviously not, although I told you I don't.
Let me explain more why I say it could be. If two people, let's say a white couple, their children get married and have kids, and their children get married and have kids, and if they're not white, there's no challenge to whoever they marry to because they're still part of that same tribe. That's what a tribe is.
Right.
But Prince Philip died today. I happened to look up and see that Prince Philip is related to his wife, Elizabeth. They both have the same grandparent. And this is because the great-grandparent was, I forget his name. You can look that up if you want to fact-check that. Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth are married and they are related.
Yeah,
and this is something that's
inbreeding.
That's commonly done, and it's done by whites because they know that it's a recessive trait and that if they bring in other genetic material, it will dilute their genes. This is why, and so what I'm saying is that
they are both great grandchildren of Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria, that's right. They're both related to Queen Victoria now. And so what I'm saying is that to press this point about the pathology, other groups can have children and say, oh, I want my children to be alive and I want them to thrive, and that's normal. But whites, that's not sufficient. They don't just want their children to exist, they want them to maintain their whiteness. And I'm arguing that that is pathological because whiteness isn't a thing, first of all, that should have that character. It's like if you wanted all your children to have blue eyes. That's not a real identity that...
Let me talk about a dad. I got daughters. I just want good men in their lives. I just want good men that will treat them well and respect them and not talk down to them.
Makes sense.
I don't care what they look like.
You don't care
because they come good and bad in all colors.
No, I don't either.
And so I got 2 daughters, and literally I have no issue with who they choose to marry. My one daughter is about to engage a young man, dark complexion from Ecuador. And so I have no issue with...
Me either.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about this race stuff so much.
No, Harold.
No, I hear that, but are you saying that that's how you feel most whites are? Like most white men, do you think they don't care if they're...
No, I think most whites are... I
haven't done a survey.
My experience is that most whites would be very...
Hold on. Also, listen, I've heard a lot of black mamas say to their sons, go find a black girl tonight when we went out on dates. They didn't want their mamas to... Their mamas didn't want their sons to find white girls.
Probably.
I've heard a lot of that from black mamas.
What I'll just say about that is, again, this is one of the points that I'm trying to make. Like if you go to, let's say, Africa, and you see there's a tribe, there's the Igbo and the Hausa. The Hausa might tell the Hausa, you don't want to marry an Igbo, you need to marry a Hausa, someone from your tribe. But that is different. You see what I'm saying? Than saying that you need to be with someone to maintain a certain identity that is genetically recessive. They didn't say you need to be black. They didn't care about the race.
It's probably true, but they're not aware of that because they have no idea about the genetic basis of that. I think probably most white families probably prefer that they continue with their white lineage.
But they do know about the genetic basis because they know that if their daughter marries a black man, their child is going to be black. Right. That's the genetic. That's all they need to know.
Yeah, they know that and they don't want it.
I don't necessarily think folks are necessarily afraid of the skin color. I think they're afraid with what comes with the hip hop culture. Yeah. Let's say,
now,
like I wouldn't want my daughters to marry a hip hop culture.
This goes back way before hip hop.
But one of this man's sons, I'd have no problem my daughter marrying. So it depends on the traditions and of the people that matter to me.
Yeah, I know, but it goes so far before that. I mean, white people would fear that. They would not.
But you're talking the past. We're talking now. Like, there's a lot of...
They would not want... they don't know. I mean, a lot of white folks have no idea about hip-hop. They don't know hip-hop. They say...
What do you mean? It's pervaded the whole...
Yeah, I know, but they don't know
that whole bitches and hoes culture, when they speak like this about women... is what people have an issue with.
Yeah,
and perhaps why they wouldn't want their daughters to date somebody from that side of the culture, not because of their skin color.
No, it's
because of the
it's deeper. They don't care about hip hop. They don't want to see black.
Listen, you have daughters, right?
One.
Okay, don't you want her just to marry any good man?
Yeah.
Any good man.
Yeah, she
doesn't
made a
matter.
mistake.
Right?
Get a divorce.
So